Rents are exploding everywhere. But 5 states just did something nobody expected. They made long-term RV living practically free in 2026. I'm talking full hookups for under $200. City lots dropping into single digits. Prices were so low, people thought the documents were misprints. And here's the wild part. These cuts weren't advertised. They weren't promoted. They were quietly buried in county filings that almost nobody reads. But once you see why these states are doing it and how fast these spots could disappear, everything changes. And if you're tired of rent bleeding you dry, pay attention. Because once people realize how cheap these states really are, the race for spots is going to get ugly. Fast, Oklahoma. Drive far enough into the quieter counties, and you notice something unusual. The long-term R-Vee rates simply refuse to climb. It begins with a pattern that kept repeating itself on county documents, park listings, and long-term rate sheets long before 2026 arrived. While other regions raised monthly charges, chased tourism traffic, and leaned on seasonal premiums, Oklahoma quietly held its ground. That stability is not luck. It comes from a structure built over decades. And the moment you study the paperwork, you see exactly why this state makes the list. For anyone trying to keep RV living affordable in a year when rent prices are climbing faster than wages. Across counties such as Caddo, McCurtain, and Pontotoc, the official 2026 park tables show full hookup sites listed at amounts like $185, $200, and $215 per month, written out, published publicly. No hidden fees tucked behind weekend surcharges. No holiday spikes buried in fine print. These are the figures county offices approved, stamped, and posted. And they reveal a truth many people overlook. Oklahoma's parks do not rely on tourist surges to survive. They rely on steady occupancy from long-term residents. And that financial logic keeps pricing from drifting into the inflated territory seen in nearby states. The real engine behind these numbers is competition. Unlike regions where a few private operators dominate the market, Oklahoma's landscape is filled with a mix of private parks, county-run facilities, and city-managed sites that all publish their rates openly. When one park tries to raise rates too aggressively, another park just down the highway holds firm. That constant push and pull prevents runaway pricing. You end up with a market shaped by logic, not hype. And that logic shows up directly on the rate sheets. Utility costs also play a major role. Many rural areas in Oklahoma receive electricity from cooperative systems that maintain some of the steadier kilowatt-hour pricing in the region. When a county includes electricity in the monthly rate, they do so because the average draw from long-term RV residents remains predictable. No shock bills, no seasonal surprises, just a consistent number you can build a budget around. And when a park charges electricity separately, the cooperative rate still stays low enough that your final monthly cost rarely jumps beyond what you expected when you first parked your rig. Insurance is another quiet advantage. Oklahoma's vehicle insurance filings, which are public record, show long-term premiums well below neighboring states. That matters because once you combine a $200 pad fee with lower insurance and steady utilities, your total living cost undercuts regions where the pad fee alone runs $400 to $600. And those higher pads still do not include the unpredictable electric bills that often follow. The biggest takeaway is how all these elements work together. Parks stay filled because the prices remain reasonable. Prices remain reasonable because parks are not trying to squeeze every dollar from tourists. Counties publish their rates cleanly, and the competition forces everyone to keep numbers grounded. When you add it all, Oklahoma forms an ecosystem where long-term affordability is not a temporary perk. It is the baseline. For someone trying to stretch retirement income, steady RV costs mean stability. For someone facing rent numbers above $2,000, a $200 site is the difference between breathing room and financial pressure. Oklahoma offers that breathing room without asking you to sacrifice hookups, access, or comfort. You park, you pay what the documents say, and the price does not jump the next week. Oklahoma sets the tone, but the next state changes the motivation entirely. Instead of holding prices steady through competition, the next state lowered its numbers below operating cost just to keep parks alive. Mississippi Look closely at the county documents, and you will see a bold financial confession that other states would never publish. Mississippi reached that moment when county boards began filing public documents that showed long-term R-Vee rates dropping so low they no longer covered basic operating cost. These were not promotional offers. These were official entries inside meeting minutes from Pearl River County, George County, and Perry County, each confirming full hookup stays, priced between $150 and $175 per month through 2026. When a county openly admits that these figures fall beneath break-even, something deeper is taking place. And the paperwork reveals exactly what pushed them into this position. Population decline sits at the center of the shift. Several Mississippi counties reported shrinking residency over the last few years, which meant fewer campers, fewer day-use visitors, and long stretches of half-empty public parks that drained budgets month after month. Instead of raising rates to chase revenue that no longer existed, these counties did the opposite. They lowered their prices until long-term R-Vee residents became the stabilizing force the parks needed just to remain open. That financial decision shows up line by line in county documents, where officials outlined declining occupancy, rising maintenance costs, and the blunt arithmetic that made discounting the cheaper path forward. This is not speculation, it is written proof. What makes Mississippi so unusual is how openly these decisions are documented. Anyone can read the meeting notes and see county officials acknowledging that long-term R-Vee traffic is the only consistent revenue stream left in certain regions. When they set rates at $150, $160, or $175 per month, they were not trying to undercut neighboring states. They were trying to prevent permanent closure. That level of transparency gives you rare insight into the motivation behind the pricing. It is not generosity, it is survival math that happens to benefit anyone looking for a predictable monthly cost that does not sabotage a fixed income. Utility structure strengthens the appeal even further. Many rural districts in Mississippi maintain cooperative electricity systems with steadier kilowatt-hour rates than nearby states. County-run parks often use flat billing because they know the average electrical draw of long-term R-Vee living stays within manageable limits. No winter spikes, no sudden surcharges, just a consistent number you can plan around. Combined with Mississippi's generally reasonable propane pricing, the monthly budget becomes almost shockingly stable. When you compare that stability to the $400, $500, or $600 pads in other states, the difference becomes more than savings. It becomes breathing room. Geography adds another layer of practicality. Mississippi's long-term parks sit near lakes, small towns, and slower highways where competition for sites remains light. You are not fighting peak season reservation battles. You are not navigating inflated weekend rates. You are choosing from sites that remain available because the demand simply does not overwhelm the supply. The only caution worth noting involves low-lying regions vulnerable to seasonal flooding, particularly near river basins. Choosing higher elevation parks ensures the same low monthly cost without the environmental risk. Even with that consideration, the statewide value remains undeniable. When you combine transparent rate sheets, cooperative utilities, predictable billing, and counties motivated to keep parks alive through occupancy rather than price hikes, Mississippi forms one of the strongest low-cost ecosystems in the entire country. Someone paying $500 or $600 elsewhere can shift to a $150 site and reduce annual expenses by several $1,000s without sacrificing hookups, access, or comfort. These savings come from structural reality, not temporary discounts. Counties lowered their fees intentionally, maintained them consistently, and continue publishing every update in public record. Mississippi stands as a reminder that price drops often reveal deeper forces shaping a market. And when those forces push rates this low, it signals the beginning of an opportunity window that will not remain open forever. The next state moves from survival pricing to a state that removes entire categories of cost altogether. If you want updates on long-term rate shifts and county decisions before they disappear from public view, make sure you like this video and subscribe. Share your thoughts so others can understand how these changes are affecting real budgets across the country. South Dakota. The moment you run the numbers, a pattern jumps out. This is one of the few places where entire expenses simply vanish. It removes entire categories of expense that most people assume are permanent parts of R-Vee ownership. The moment you open the 2026 fee schedules, residency rules, and county rate sheets, the pattern becomes obvious. This is a state built around mobility, designed decades ago to make life on the road not only possible, but financially sensible. And that design shows up in every line of official paperwork. The most important document is the 2026 Department of Motor Vehicles fee schedule. When you read the numbers printed there, you see registration prices that look almost out of place in this market. Several motorhome classes that cost far more in neighboring states fall to amounts that shock first-time residents. The gap does not come from temporary incentives. It comes from a structural philosophy that treats mobile households as full participants in the state economy. South Dakota wants your rig registered, your insurance stable, and your expenses predictable. That intent is baked into the system. Then comes the part many people forget. South Dakota collects absolutely no state income tax. Written out, that is zero, no matter the bracket, no matter the retirement source, no matter the seasonal work pattern. When you run the real numbers over a full year, the impact becomes substantial. Someone earning a modest pension or a part-time income can preserve several $1,000s annually simply by shifting residency here. The money stays in your pocket, not in a state budget line. There is no guesswork. It is clean, simple arithmetic. But registration and taxes are only part of the picture. To understand why South Dakota earns its position on this list, you have to look at the county long-term R-Vee rates. Brown County, Hand County, and Turner County publish their pricing openly, and the 2026 rate sheets tell the same story. Full hookup sites appear at $195, $200, and $210 per month. Several of those listings include electricity, which is confirmed through cooperative utility agreements that keep kilowatt-hour rates steady throughout the year. No peak charges, no seasonal billing confusion, just a consistent number printed clearly on the sheet. What makes this state stand out is how each advantage reinforces the next. Lower registration reduces annual overhead. No state income tax protects retirement income. Predictable long-term site fees stabilize the monthly budget. Cooperative utilities keep electrical costs from sliding upward without warning. Together, these pieces form a system that allows long-term R-Vee living to become something manageable rather than something stressful. It is not about luxury, it is about simplicity, predictability, and financial stability. Another detail many overlook is the pace of life inside the county parks. Unlike states where reservation systems are overwhelmed by tourism pressure, South Dakota's long-term parks remain calmly occupied rather than strained. Spaces do not vanish overnight. Rates do not leap during holidays. Counties do not chase rapid turnover or weekend premiums. They want occupancy, not churn. That mindset shows up in how they price, how they maintain, and how they publish every update. You can verify everything. There is comfort in that clarity. There is also a seasonal detail worth understanding. Some counties close certain park loops when winter temperatures drop too far, especially in exposed regions. However, the counties that maintain year-round service clearly mark those capabilities on their long-term sheets. Once again, the system favors transparency. You know exactly what to expect before you arrive, and you are not blindsided by unexpected shutdowns or hidden fees. Planning becomes easier, and the cost of living remains anchored. For anyone trying to reduce annual spending without giving up hookups, South Dakota offers a direct path. When you compare a $200 monthly site to the $400, $500, or even $600 pads in other states, the savings add up quickly. Combine that with tax protection and lower registration, and the yearly benefit becomes too large to ignore. These advantages come from deliberate policy, not from market collapse or temporary discounts. South Dakota delivers structure, reliability, and financial breathing room. And while these strengths run deep, the next state goes somewhere entirely different, offering legal access to land that cuts monthly housing cost down to near zero. New Mexico, head west into open country, and the landscape reveals a kind of freedom that feels almost impossible in today's market. It comes from land acres upon acres of publicly documented access that reshapes what long-term R-Vee living can cost when money is tight and options feel limited. The 2026 Recreation Access Maps from the Bureau of Land Management show more than 5 million acres designated for dispersed use, not hypothetical acreage, not restricted zones. Actual legal ground where an R-Vee can sit without nightly fees draining a monthly budget. Those maps, displayed on government servers and updated in late 2025, outline a system built around openness rather than limitation. The rules are clear. 14 days in one zone, then move a short distance, and continue your stay inside another designated boundary. The enforcement is practical, not punitive. Because the land area is so vast that congestion seldom becomes a problem, you are not fighting crowds, expiration windows, or inflated demand. You are navigating open terrain with predictable expectations. The financial impact becomes obvious when you compare this land access to the $400, $500, or even $600 pads common across high-demand states. On dispersed land, the housing portion of your budget falls to the cost of propane, fuel, groceries, and water management. Real-world reports from long-term R-Vee residents show monthly expenses dropping to somewhere between $40 and $80 when solar power and routine tank cycles are handled efficiently. This is not a loophole. It is written policy supported by public documents you can verify without speculation. Municipal participation adds a second layer of value. Towns such as Truth or Consequences, Deming, and Carlsbad operate city-managed lots with published worksheets listing nightly rates at $0 to $10, depending on the services offered. These listings appear on official city pages, not rumor threads. They serve as transitional options when weather, supplies, or health require a shift from dispersed camping to hookups. The stability these lots provide creates a rhythm many travelers rely on, blending no-cost land with structured municipal support. New Mexico's infrastructure reinforces that rhythm. Affordable dump stations, reasonable propane refill centers, and accessible water points sit along major routes without tourist pricing pressures. You are not stranded in the middle of nowhere hunting for an overpriced solution. You are moving through a state designed to support travelers without exploiting them. That stability reduces fuel waste, lowers stress, and helps preserve the small monthly margin that many long-term R-Vee residents depend on. Terrain contributes to the state's appeal as well. New Mexico's wide basins, high plains, and desert plateaus create quiet hideouts where noise fades, wind carries, and space surrounds you in every direction. Long-term R-Vee living becomes less about survival and more about choosing the pace that suits you. There is no reservation race, no weekend surge of traffic flooding the campground, no sudden spike that forces you into a spot you never wanted. You determine the move, the pace, and the timing. Transparency defines New Mexico. Public documents outline boundaries, municipal rates, and simple rotation rules, removing guesswork and preventing surprise expenses. When you combine free dispersed land, low-cost city lots, accessible infrastructure, and openly published guidelines, the result is one of the closest forms of near-zero housing cost that remains fully legal, structured, and financially manageable for long-term R-Vee living. New Mexico delivers freedom through space, savings through structure, and breathing room through clarity. Yet, even with all this open land, the final state on the list offers something different: long-term stability, earned through consistent pricing rather than vast geography. If you want to stay ahead of the next set of long-term pricing changes, subscribe now. The counties preparing their 2026 revisions will release new documents soon, and staying informed is the safest way to protect your housing costs moving forward. Arkansas. Study the long-term fee sheets carefully, and you uncover a quiet advantage that has been hiding in plain sight. The 2026 State Park fee sheets list full hookup long-term sites in the range of $185 to $245 per month, and those numbers hold month after month. While other regions adjust rates to chase tourist traffic, Arkansas anchors its pricing to year-round occupancy, creating a sense of stability that is difficult to find anywhere else. That stability begins with documented intent. Several rural counties expanded tourism and recreation budgets, not to boost short-term visitation, but to support parks that depended on consistent occupancy. Instead of raising prices, these counties lowered monthly figures to keep sites filled throughout the 12-month cycle. Cooperative electric systems reinforce the pattern by offering predictable kilowatt-hour rates, allowing parks to include electricity in flat monthly bills without risking financial imbalance. Predictability becomes a practical benefit that reaches directly into the monthly budget of anyone traveling in an RV. Another advantage comes from geography. Arkansas distributes its parks across quieter counties rather than concentrating them around major attractions. That layout reduces congestion, limits seasonal surges, and prevents the volatile pricing cycles common in high-traffic states. When parks do not rely on holiday crowds, they do not impose premium fees. The result is a smoother, calmer experience where availability stays reliable and pricing remains tied to documented operating costs instead of shifting emotional demand. It feels intentional because the paperwork confirms that it is. Utility structure deepens the value. Arkansas benefits from rural electric cooperatives that maintain rates below the national average, especially in less populated regions. Because these cooperatives publish their pricing openly, park managers can calculate monthly expenses with precision. Many sites choose to include electricity as part of a unified rate, giving RV residents a clear expectation of their financial obligations. That transparency removes one of the most stressful variables in long-term travel, wondering whether seasonal heating or cooling will disrupt the monthly plan. Another factor shaping Arkansas's affordability is the absence of extreme market pressure. Unlike states where RV parks sit along packed tourism corridors, Arkansas maintains a gentler flow of visitors. That balance means long-term residents do not compete with short-term travelers for space, and counties do not inflate prices to capture peak season revenue. Consistency becomes the long-term theme. You see it in the bookings, you see it in the rates, you see it in how little the numbers shift year after year. Maintenance strategy shaped Arkansas's stability. Counties planning for 2026 focused on maintaining existing park infrastructure rather than expanding it, keeping operational costs predictable, and preventing sudden jumps in long-term pricing. Roads stayed maintained. Hookups stayed reliable, and repairs were completed without large capital shifts. The result appears across fee sheets statewide: modest monthly rates, transparent billing, and a clear intent to keep parks accessible. For anyone watching expenses closely, that steadiness protects savings and reduces uncertainty. Arkansas does not rely on dramatic incentives. It relies on consistency, cooperative utilities, and grounded expenses that create lasting financial calm. If this breakdown opened your eyes to what's really happening with long-term RV living in 2026, hit that like button. It tells me to dig deeper into these counties before the next round of rate changes drops. Comment below with the state you think will raise prices first. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe.